Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier, Mike Beer. The Saturday race of the day, of course, it's the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby. Let's take a look at the field of 20, and there's a +1 as well on the also eligible list. That's Blended Citizen. You can access free Formulator Pass performances for the Kentucky Derby on the Race of the Day event page on DRF.com. Download them, handicap along with the three of us. We'll take this field in post-position order. Mike Beer will begin with a 50-1 chance. The Grade 1 winning Firenze Fire, who seems like a one-turn horse trying to stretch his ability to 1.25 miles.
Yeah, he drew the dreaded rail, but the post position is the least of his concerns in this race. I mean, I think it's pretty well established so far that he doesn't really want to go this far. And on top of that, you have to deal with his last two races, which aren't even close to his two best.
Yeah, I don't have to add to that. I think he's in the wrong race. Pat Day Mile would be a fringe contender, I suppose, but here in the Derby, I think it'll take a miracle for him to hit the board.
Matt, the number 2 is Free Drop Billy, another Grade 1 winner who's going to be a big price in the Kentucky Derby. 30-1 on the morning line for Robbie Alvarado and Dale Romans. I thought he ran okay in his seasonal debut, the Holy Bull. I thought he ran okay in the Gotham, and I thought he ran okay in the Bluegrass. The problem is he hasn't taken that big step forward I wanted to see at 3. I can maybe see this horse underneath, though, somewhere.
Yeah, agree 100%. I thought the Holy Bull was a fine enough effort, no match for Audible, but the problem is it doesn't seem like, to me anyway, he's taken a step forward from that seasonal debut. He looks like he wants to run all day, so I suppose maybe underneath in a try or a super, but I think that's the ceiling.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way. It's just one of those horses at a big price. I might want to try and get in there somewhere because I did like his Holy Bull. Even in the Bluegrass last time, I thought that trip maybe wasn't perfect for him, but I still wanted to see him put in some kind of a better run through the stretch. He didn't do it.
It was a tale of two pace scenarios in the last two races for the 3 Promises Fulfilled, who got away on a fairly easy lead in the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth in a race where they ran 1, 2, 3 around the track. Not so in the Florida Derby, where there was a lot of heat and Promises Fulfilled stopped to a walk. Let's cue the Timeform US pace projector. You'd think Promises Fulfilled would be on the lead. You'd think wrong. It's a red fast pace. They have Justify on the lead. Something tells me if Promises Fulfilled breaks Mike Beer, he's in front.
Yeah, I guess though, they've sent him in his last 2 starts, so maybe they'll just send him again. It feels like he's destined to be a pace casualty on Saturday.
Yeah, I think the only way, if you drew up some crazy scenario where he were to win this race, it's in gate-to-wire fashion. It's not sitting off of anyone. And having said that, it just seems incredibly unlikely that he can do that.
Matt, the number 4 Flame Away is just an admirable, tough, gutsy horse. He wins on any kind of a surface. He tried so hard in the Bluegrass, and I love the way Jose Lezcano rode him. He went to the front, and he tried to sneak away from that field on the turn by going for home early with that 1 1/8, and Good Magic just was able to outfinish him. He's a hard-trying, honest horse. I'm just not sure he's good enough to win the Derby.
Not sure he's good enough to win the Derby. Not sure 10 furlongs is really what he wants. I like the fight in him. I like the try. He goes out there and gives you everything he has. Unfortunately for him, I think it's just a little bit too tough.
Yeah, it just feels like, there's plenty of things to like about this horse. It just doesn't feel like he's a true Kentucky Derby kind of horse.
Mike Beer, the number 5, is Audible, a New York bred that has won his last 4 starts for trainer Todd Pletcher. He just took Gulfstream Park by storm, storming through the Holy Bull and the Florida Derby with career best buyers of 99 in each and every race. In the Florida Derby, he got that wonderful setup that doomed Promises Fulfilled to defeat. How much of that aided his victory, or was he just going to win anyway because he's pretty good?
Yeah, maybe he's just going to win anyway, but the trip certainly didn't hurt, that's for sure. It was nice to see him get outrun a little bit, though, and be able to cope with that and come with a big run through the stretch. I guess the real question you have to ask yourself about Audible, if you really like him on Saturday, and there are ways to really like him, is do you think he's going to carry that Gulfstream form forward out of Florida? Because sometimes Pletcher's horses do it, and sometimes they don't. If he can do that, he's a huge contender in this race.
Yeah, there's plenty to like here about this horse. The paired up 99 tops. I think he's going to be sitting on potentially a forward move there. I'm also a little bit curious to find out what kind of trip he's going to work out, because we saw that he came from a little bit farther off of it in the Florida Derby. He was a little bit closer in the Holy Bull. I can't help but think he's going to be mid-pack in a race like this, and unfortunately for him, that's usually when you can get yourself into a little bit of trouble traffic-wise.
But I agree with you guys that he just seems like a strong contender on paper. The number 6 is Good Magic, last year's 2-year-old champion based on his only win of the year. A very impressive one at that in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Maybe a little bit of a pace casualty in the Fountain of Youth where there wasn't a lot of speed in his first start off the layoff, and he finished a flat 3rd. Last time out, Mike, he put it all together in the Bluegrass. And I thought he moved a little bit early as well once Flame Away tried to sneak away, and he just gamely ran down this horse. it looks like Chad is slowly getting good magic back into form. He beat 3 of these in the Bluegrass.
Yeah, if nothing else, it was nice to see him, sort of take a step forward out of that fountain of youth where he just wasn't sharp for whatever reason. He did move forward last time. I wasn't blown away with his Bluegrass, but I like to see him get himself into the race and then hold on to the end. And maybe it's just simply a situation where Chad Brown repeats what he did with this horse as a 2-year-old, gets him to peak at the right time, third off the layoff. I suppose if that's what's going on here, that he could take another step forward and put himself there. We'll see what kind of price is. At around 12 to 1, I don't have any argument with him. If he takes more money than that, I think I got to side against this horse.
I think flat was the perfect way to describe that fountain of youth. He just never threatened at any point, and if you want to believe that he was a short horse, so be it. Thought the Bluegrass was inoffensive. He was wide throughout. It was a decent enough effort, but I just kind of look at it and say, based on what some of the other main contenders have done visually and from a figure standpoint, they've been a heck of a lot more impressive as 3-year-olds than good magic. Look, crazy to throw out Chad Brown, but at the same time, this horse is going to need to step up in a big way.
Matt, all eyes on the morning line favorite. That's the number 7, Justify, 3 to 1, unbeaten from 3 brilliant starts in Southern California for trainer Bob Baffert. And in each and every one of those starts, he earned triple-digit Beyer speed figures. He's done it on the lead. He's done it from off the pace. He's done it on a fast track. He's done it on a wet track. The curse of Apollo lurks over his shoulder. How much stock do you place in that?
0. I don't care about the curse or any of that kind of stuff. It's more a matter of, is this horse good enough to win or not? From a figure standpoint, he is strictly the horse to beat. It's going to be very interesting to see. I think he works out arguably the ideal trip in here, but he's going to have to beat better horses, and he may need to do it in a little bit of a different manner than he has in his first 3.
Yeah, it's really just a question of whether you feel like, with all the things working against him here, so light on seasoning, facing better horses, big field, maybe the trip doesn't work perfectly for him. I suppose any one of those things could get him beaten here. There's no denying his talent on the way in. He is way the fastest horse on the way into this race, and it just feels like he's going to be forward, I think, and do a pretty good trip in this race. We'll see if any of the extraneous stuff gets him beaten here.
Matt, a fast pace might work into the hooves of the 8 Lone Sailor. I kind of feel the same way about Lone Sailor as I do about Free Drop Billy. I think he's a nice horse, might be in a little bit too tough from a win standpoint, but might offer a little bit of value in single race exotics. In the Louisiana Derby, James Grant took him right to the rail after kind of a no speed break whatsoever. He was shuffled a little bit entering the turn, and then he came with a big move, roared right past Noble Indy. Did he hang a little bit? Did he not see Noble Indy coming back? It was a really improved performance for a horse that had been mired in the 70s from a buyer standpoint.
It's difficult for me to say that he hung, because when you look and see fractionally the final 1/8 of a mile, the fastest of the 3 was Noble Indy. So I kind of feel like Noble Indy just didn't see those horses and then re-engaged and went on with it. If there's a serious pace signed on, I think Lone Sailor comes with an effort. That work 2 back is off the charts in 57 and 3. I think he's feeling pretty good right now. I'm certainly going to use him underneath.
Yeah, I have a little thing for this horse. I've always liked him. I like that he finally took a step forward. I don't really think he had any excuse last time in the Louisiana Derby, but he did run a better race that day. I don't know, guys. I've always liked him. I'll try and throw him in somewhere.
Juddmonte Farms homebred Hofburg is next for trainer Bill Mott. That's the number 9, 20 to 1 on the morning line. Second in the Florida Derby behind Audible, but certainly a good start in the first start against winners. But he had that fast pace really working to his favor.
Yeah, he really did. It's hard to match the buzz of horses like Justify and Mendelssohn on the way into this Kentucky Derby. This horse is trying really hard to match the buzz of those 2 horses. And listen, there's a lot of things to like about him. I personally don't like him that much in the Kentucky Derby, but I can see this horse being real good down the line.
I got to be honest. I think if I'm taking one horse out of this race for the long term, if it's not a horse like Mendelssohn or Justified, it is Hofburg, because he's got the pedigree, he's got the connections. Running style-wise, yeah, he's going to need to show that he can adapt a little bit here on Saturday afternoon, but I don't think it's entirely out of the question that he could possibly win.
No Curse of Apollo worries for the 10, my boy Jack Matt. He ran 6 times as a 2-year-old. He's run 10 times overall. He's figured this game out. And if you give him a fast pace, as we are expecting in the Kentucky Derby, he's going to come running. In the Louisiana Derby, he was so far back and he was so wide into the stretch that you can understand why maybe he got a little bit late in the final 1/8 of a mile. Last time out in the Lexington, he was supposed to beat that field, and he did. Are you concerned that the buyer came back a little light?
He's a little bit slow on figs, but I think the important thing with a horse like this is running style. If you're playing a superfecta or a trifecta, he feels like the perfect underneath kind of candidate. I almost view him as a better version of Lone Sailor. And at the end of the day, I'm hopeful. As well as he may run on Saturday, I want him back on turf down the road.
It'll be interesting to see if DeSormo presses on the main track with him. Listen, I've made it pretty clear the last couple of weeks that I feel like this is a horse who has a chance to get a piece of this race. He's going to sit back, he's going to make one run, but that's what this horse does. He runs every time through this stretch. I don't think he's nearly good enough to win this race. I'll use him underneath.
Talk about a horse that runs every time. The number 11, Bolt d'Oro, never off the board from 6 starts, a multiple Grade 1 winner. He got off to a little bit of a late start this year, but he has had 2 hard races. You could argue that has him primed for the Derby. You could argue that those 2 hard races have been too tough on him. But I think you made a very good argument earlier this week, Mike Beer, in saying that a lot of the winners of these prep races had perfect scenarios, the perfect storm from a pace and trip standpoint. Bolt d'Oro didn't have that in the Santa Anita Derby.
Yeah, a lot of good trips for the main contenders in this race on the way in. It's not the case with Bolt d'Oro. The more I look at this race, the longer I look at this race, the more that I feel like I'm just going to be absolutely shocked if he's not he should be the second favorite in this race, and they have him, I think, 4th choice on the morning line maybe. He has run the fastest races outside of Justify. He ran fine in the Santa Anita Derby last time in a race that he really couldn't win, and it's going to be different on Saturday. He could get a much better trip in that race. He's shown that he's fast enough to win. This horse is a huge contender, and he may be a square price.
I think there's a real scenario where he turns the tables on Justify. He gets a more favorable pace situation this time around. Justify has to work a little bit harder. You can make the case that the 2 races he's run as a 3-year-old are better than anything anyone else as a 3-year-old in this field have run, with the exception of Justify's Santa Anita Derby. I have no real knocks against Bolt d'Oro. I think he's a major contender.
Obviously a major contender in this race. I have to admit that I wasn't a big fan of the 12 Enticed as a 2-year-old, despite him having a graded stakes win at Churchill Downs. He's beginning to win me over. That was a fast pace, Matt, in the Wood Memorial last time out. He was chasing a runaway leader. He had to go and get that horse, and then Vino Rosso, the winner, came and got him on a day where the outside was the best. Enticed was herded down towards the rail in mid-stretch. I thought that was a really likable performance.
Thought he did most of the dirty work in there, and unfortunately just got run down at the end. He also took a pretty good bounce at the top of the lane by Vino Rosso. I think Entice is a very nice horse, but I look at the pedigree. Medaglia d'Oro, hit or miss as far as the distance is concerned. It's tricky. The longer it got, the worse she got. She's brilliant at those middle distances. I think ultimately he's going to be a mile or even a 9 furlong type.
Yeah, there's a real scenario in that Wood Memorial where you could just say this horse maybe ran the better race than Vino Rosso did. It just didn't work out from a trip standpoint. The flip side of that is that the other horse, Vino Rosso, feels like he's just much better suited to a fast-paced 1.25-mile race, and that could be Entice undoing, but he's a nice horse.
Mike, the number 13, Bravado, reminds me a little bit of Promises Fulfilled. Pace-aided win, perhaps 2 starts back in the Grade 2 Risen Star. They threw a little gas at him last time out in the Louisiana Derby, and he came unglued. He looked very uncomfortable, lugging out on the turn, and was basically eased in the stretch. That's really not the way usually to go into the Derby, but it is Wayne Lucas.
Yeah, true enough. It's Lucas, so you don't just want to totally dismiss him because he has a way of getting these horses to run. This horse has 1 race, the Risen Star, where he had all the best of it and just got it done, and that's what got him into this race. Other than that, and that race doesn't even make a contender in here. Other than that, he's just not competitive.
I don't see him as anything other than possibly a little bit of a wrinkle in the ointment as far as the pace is concerned, because you hear Lucas talk, he wants to be forwardly placed with Bravado. So all of a sudden, if you add him, where maybe it doesn't seem like that's a natural scenario, if you add him to the pace, maybe things are a little bit hotter than we'd think.
The number 14, Mendelssohn, is the X factor in this race. You either love him or you hate him. You either love the way he moves and the way he dominated that field in his dirt debut in the UAE Derby, or you're saying he beat nothing and he took advantage of a gold rail. Matt, your thoughts on Mendelssohn?
I think it can be all of those things mixed together. He didn't beat much as far as the field is concerned. He did ride an incredibly speed-friendly racetrack. I think it was more speed than inside that day, but I also think, look, when horses win by 18.5 lengths, it's not a fluke. This is a really talented horse. Pedigree-wise, it's there. You can make the argument he's wanted dirt all along, and he's just that good on the other surfaces naturally. I don't know. I think there is a scenario where if there's a blowout winner of this race, I think it's Mendelssohn. I could easily also see Mendelssohn running 9th.
Yeah, I think those things are both true too. He's a really interesting horse in this race, no matter which side of the line you stand on with him. I think I'm on the other side of the line from you guys. I don't doubt his talent. I think he's a talented horse. I can't I can't bet him in this race just off of the UAE Derby, where he just had the run of the race against an awful field. I know he's good. I am not betting him as the second choice.
And he is the second choice on the morning line. Let's move on to the 15 Instilled Regard. Matt, we'll start with you. You got a future ticket on Instilled Regard somewhere. This is a horse that started off his 3-year-old campaign on the right foot in the Lecomte. You could argue maybe slightly pace compromised in the Risen Star, but then Justify and Bolt d'Oro just kind of ran him right off the track in the Santa Anita Derby, but he didn't have an advantageous pace scenario in that race either. It's a better situation for him here. The question is he good enough?
He's probably not good enough. I want to use him at the very least underneath. But I kind of feel like this is a horse where I can make excuses for each of the past two. The Santa Anita Derby, just based on the pace, wasn't going to work. And he's probably not as good as those top two. And then 2 starts back in the Risen Star. That was just a very oddly run race where the pace held up. I think he's better than he looks on paper. I think he's a legitimate threat underneath for 3rd or 4th, and the distance is his friend.
Yeah, I just want to like his last 2 races more than I do. And I just didn't see him really do any running in those 2 races, and that bothers me about him. I think there's still a chance he turns out to be pretty good down the line. I can't see him in the Derby.
The Curse of Apollo Voodoo has to work on too, because the 16 Magnum Moon is also an undefeated horse with a great trainer in Todd Pletcher that did not race as a 2-year-old. This horse won the Arkansas Derby last time out. Great ride from Luis Saez. Understood he was on the best horse, went to the lead, dropped the anchor, and then despite this horse drifting out considerably in the stretch, was more than good enough to win easily.
Yeah, just much the best in that race. Really soft trip, but you're right, really good ride from Luis Saez to take advantage of what was there for him. Listen, he's another horse in here. I have no doubt that he has talent. Why am I supposed to like him in the Kentucky Derby at 6-1? This horse ran a 97 first time out. He ran a 98 in his 4th career start. There is no improvement. He is not fast enough to win this race right now. So you're talking about a horse at an underlaid price who has to take a huge step forward to win.
Yeah, Mike's checked off most of the boxes that I have concerns with as well. I don't think he's getting any better. I hate the drifting out. And I also question that Arkansas path. I'm not entirely convinced that that was loaded with superstars. And maybe he was just simply better than everyone else. Now you're going to have to deal with a much more difficult pace situation than he has down in Arkansas. He's also probably going to have to come from farther off of it. But this could be an instance where I have a feeling it seems like everybody's getting off this wagon. If you like this horse, you might be looking at double digits.
Speaking of the Oaklawn path, the number 17 Solo Mini also comes out of races like the Rebel and the Arkansas Derby. How many times do they say it in Southern California? It's the other Baffert. We've got a positive formulator fact for Solo Mini, who finished first in the Cash Coal Futurity, Los Al Futurity, and was disqualified. Past 4-year, 3-year-old dirt routers, 3rd off the layoff in graded stakes. This exact formulator fact worked for American Pharoah when he won the Derby and Abel Tasman when she won the Oaks last year. Solo Mini did not have a good trip, I thought, Mike, last time out in the Arkansas Derby. Slow pace and basically 4-5 path throughout.
Right, he's been beaten by Magnum Moon twice, but as opposed to that horse, he was sort of down inside in the Rebel, got in a little bit tight, had to steady a little bit, and then got out finished at the end. Last time they just stacked him out, and maybe the toughest trip in racing, wide off a slow pace. He had no chance in that race either. He's too slow to win, but he's also a huge price with some talent, and I just feel like maybe this is a situation where they do what they did in the Los Al Futurity. Let him drop out, make one run into this pace, and maybe that's where he gets a piece of this at a big price.
Yeah, Baffert has said as much. That's kind of what the game plan's going to be. Just kind of grab him out of the gate, let him settle, and then go with that one run. Because if you rush him, that's when he gets kind of sloppy mechanically. I don't know. I haven't been blown away by either one of his starts. I understand he had a rough go of it in the Arkansas Derby, but this horse is going to need to move forward. We talk about horses that haven't improved. This horse going back to the front runner, he has not improved at all. He's going to need to jump up in a big way.
The beautifully bred number 18 Vino Rosso, John Velasquez, Todd Pletcher, they won the Derby last year, of course, with Always Dreaming for this owner, St. Elias Stable. Vino Rosso struck me as a horse with a lot of ability early at 2 that really didn't seem to put it all together mentally or professionally, ran in spots in several races at Tampa Bay Downs. Now, while aided by a fast pace, Matt, and maybe being on the best part of the track in the Wood Memorial, it was the first complete race we've seen from Vino Rosso in a long time, and he is bred to get every step of this 1.25 miles and should get the right setup.
Yeah, I agree about the pedigree and I agree about the setup. I disagree slightly about him putting it all together. I still have some reservations about this horse on the turns because his 2 real issues down at Tampa Bay was the turn. He was fine in the straightaways, he hit the turns, and he idled. You watch John Velasquez in the Wood Memorial, you got just inside a 1/2 mile and he's getting the bat out, hitting this horse on the shoulder. It's like he's not running on the turns. I like everything about him. I just don't want to find out Saturday afternoon that he still hasn't put it together. Get me to Belmont Park for the Belmont Stakes. I think he has a big chance there.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what he does. This was a horse who I didn't really get all that much leading into the Wood Memorial, and he sort of won me over in that race. I know the pace was fast, and that helped him. He got outrun by it. He made a long run in that race, though, and he still finished up at the end. I like the way that he ran on through the stretch of that race. I think the 1.25 miles helps this horse. He's one of the longer prices of the three. I really only feel like 3 of the Pletchers have a real chance in this race. He's the longest price of those 3. I'm going to use this horse.
The number 19 is Noble Indy, Mike. Second time blinkers worked the charm for Vino Rosso. It was first time blinkers for Noble Indy last time out in the Louisiana Derby. While the pace was fast in that race, the horse that Noble Indy was pressing was 150 to 1.
Right.
Noble Indy took over the lead on the turn, was immediately confronted by Lone Sailor and My Boy Jack, and it looked like he was in hot water. Do we give him extra credit for roaring back along the inside, or do we kind of work against those 2 horses?
Yeah, it's a tough call. I don't know how much credit I really want to give him. If nothing else, I don't think I really like that Louisiana Derby that much as a race. I know he's the biggest price of the Pletcher 4. He's the one I don't want.
I think you can make the argument that he may have been the loser of the draw, breaking as far outside as he is. He's going to have to go, I think, with Florent and Giroux. I don't think he can win on Saturday. More and more I look at it, but I do think there's something here, and I think down the road, I think he can be a useful one.
Matt Combatant doesn't have the win record of Flame Away, but he's a gutsy, hard-trying horse for Steve Asmussen, and you could argue that in the Arkansas Derby, he really didn't get any kind of a situation. There was no pace for him to run at. He was last after a half mile, and he passed a couple of tired horses in the stretch. He just hasn't gotten much faster. I think there's a race for him down the road. It might be at slightly shorter distances.
Agreed. I kind of feel like he's a 8.5 furlong type, maybe even a miler, but we won't know until he gets back to those distances. He's going to come from out of it. He's another one. If you're playing a superfecta, I would strongly urge you to consider him underneath.
Yeah, exactly. I love this horse. I just don't like him in the Derby.
And Blended Citizen is you're also eligible. He'll need some scratch help in order to get in. Time for our top selections for the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby. We throw them up. Mike Beer, you're going with Justify. You don't believe in all this Apollo nonsense. You simply believe he's the best horse.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I know he's the favorite. Generally speaking, I like to sort of look for somebody else in a race like the Derby and try and get somebody at a better price. I just think this horse is good.
Matt Mendelssohn, you and I agree in here. We were just both taken by the way he won the UAE Derby. We can question the competition all we want. We can question the racetrack all we want. But it's not like that's Mendelssohn's really only career-defining moment. Certainly it was his most brilliant, but he has shown the ability to ship to the United States and use tactical speed to win races like the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. He doesn't seem like one of those slow-breaking horses, and really the break's the key for Mendelssohn, isn't it?
I agree 100%. I think I understand anyone that looks at this horse and says you can't judge him off of the UAE Derby by itself, but then I go back and look and say, okay, well, he's won on 3 different surfaces in 3 different countries in his past 3 races. He's won on the lead and off of the lead. Maybe he's going to get outrun early, but I think he takes up a pretty good position, maybe 4th or 5th on the outside, and if he's good enough, he should have every opportunity with Ryan Moore. He may not be a great bet at the price, but I think there's a scenario where he might be the best horse.
Give me the 4 numbers you used in the paper.
I went 14, 9, 7, 11.
Mike Beer, Justify, top 4 picks.
Yeah, I went 7, 18, 14, 17 as my 4th pick. I probably should have thrown Boltoro in there, but I didn't.
Mendelssohn, for me, I think the key again is the break. Can he sit in mid-pack, maybe even take a little dirt in his face, something that's never happened before? But the way he ran on the turn in the UAE Derby, I'm expecting him to make a move on the turn and maybe put some fear into somebody. 14, 7, 11, 5 for me in the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby. It's your Saturday race of the day and has an approximate post time of 6:50 Eastern. Best of luck.